Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Whenever we talk about the invisible rules that govern modern media, we're really talking about classical literary criticism, specifically the Roman Titans. Today we're going to see how three ancient thinkers secretly laid the foundation for literally every movie, book, and political speech we consume today.
It really begs a fundamental question, right? Who actually wrote the rules of good storytelling? I mean, have you ever wondered why some movies leave you completely speechless while others feel like, I don't know, a boring checklist? Or why some speeches move entire nations while others just feel incredibly manipulative? There are invisible rules governing how we judge art, literature, and persuasion. And today, we are going to meet the three guys who literally wrote that rule book.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Roman critical school, then look at Horace on craft and unity, Longinus on achieving the sublime, Quintillian the ethical order, and finally wrap up with their competing tensions and legacy.
Section 1. The Roman Critical School.
Now, it's important to clarify right off the bat that this wasn't some physical school with classrooms and chalkboards. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a shared intellectual orientation built on Greek foundations, heavyweights like Plato and Aristotle. And as you can see, this timeline spans roughly a century. From Horace's Ars Poetica around 19 BCE through Longinus in the 1st century CE, all the way to Quintillian's Institutio Oratoria around 95 CE. This century basically captured three distinct, incredibly powerful voices.
So, what brilliantly illustrates this school is their focus on practical application. They adopted Greek theory for highly practical Roman ends. They were absolutely obsessed with decorum, which is just matching your form and style perfectly to your audience. And their critical writing was actually literary in its own right, written in verse or elevated prose. But the main takeaway here is that they linked poetry and rhetoric directly to civic life. They weren't just sitting around asking what literature is. They demanded to know what it should actually do for society.
Section 2. Horace, craft and unity.
Let's start with Horace. He was a meticulous, rule-governed craftsman. Around 19 BCE, he wrote the Ars Poetica, addressing it to the prominent Piso family. And central to his entire philosophy is this concept, dulce et utile. He argued that poetry absolutely must simultaneously please, that's the dulce, and instruct, that's the utile. Think of it as ancient edutainment, right? For Horace, neither pleasure nor instruction is sufficient on its own. If you just instruct, well, it's a textbook and nobody wants that. If you just please, it's empty calories. You really have to have both. Now, what's really interesting about this next point is Horace's absolute dedication to the grind. He famously advised writers to hold a manuscript for 9 years. Literally, lock it in a drawer for almost a decade before letting anyone see it. No way we could do that today, right? But to Horace, raw genius means absolutely nothing without rigorous labor, relentless self-criticism, and endless revision. Making great art is a massive discipline.
He also demanded strict unity of design. Every single piece of a poem must serve the total effect, like a giant puzzle. He was a total stickler for decorum and character representation, too. Basically, heroic characters need to act their age and social station. No weird, out-of-character moments allowed. And when it came to tradition, he believed true originality doesn't come from just tossing out the past. Instead, it comes from skillfully processing and transforming those inherited Greek models, rather than just passively copying them.
Section 3. Longinus, achieving the sublime. Okay, shifting gears to our second figure. We don't actually know the true identity of the author we call Longinus, but whoever wrote this 1st century treatise represents the highly emotional, visionary, proto-romantic voice of Rome. They laid out 5 distinct steps to achieve the sublime. It fundamentally starts with greatness of thought. That must be combined with strong, inspired emotion. Then you add skillful figures of speech, noble diction, and finally elevated composition. But remember, the absolutely crucial foundational first step is always that greatness of thought. So the crucial point is this massive contrast. Standard literature, even really good literature, merely persuades or pleases you. It focuses on beauty or correctness. But the sublime? Wow, the sublime overwhelms you.
It completely transports you and produces a feeling of elevation far above normal human experience. It's meant to hit you like a massive blockbuster movie and leave you utterly speechless.
Because Longinus was chasing that overwhelming feeling, his approach was evaluative, not prescriptive. He was way less interested in Horace's strict rules. Strikingly, he used cross-cultural examples to prove his points, placing Homer right alongside the Hebrew book of Genesis. He also brought a super fascinating political dimension to his work. He explicitly blamed the decay of great literature on the loss of civic freedom and the rise of a corrupt, wealth-obsessed culture. Sound familiar?
Section 4. Quintillian, the ethical orator.
Now for our final figure. If Horace is the craftsman and Longinus is the emotional visionary, Quintillian is the civic humanist and the moral compass. Around 95 CE, he wrote a massive 12-volume guide on rhetorical education. And his entire philosophy boils down to this one idea. The ideal orator is a good man skilled in speaking. For Quintillian, this wasn't just a nice, warm thought. It was a strict requirement. If a speaker uses language to manipulate people without ethical grounding, they aren't a true orator. They are just a sophist, a dangerous fraud.
Let's move on and see how this builds into his comprehensive curriculum, based on the 5 canons of rhetoric. An ethical speaker must master invention, discovering the best arguments, arrangement, to organize them effectively, style, for choosing the exact right language, memory, to retain the speech, and delivery, for the physical and vocal presentation. His curriculum was so incredibly exhaustive, it even included a massive survey of Greek and Latin authors, which basically stands as one of the earliest exercises in Western canon formation. To really get what Quintillian valued, just look at his preferred models. He totally idolized Cicero, whose style was balanced, copious, morally grounded, and packed with genuine substance. On the flip side, Quintillian heavily criticized Seneca's style, feeling it was way too compressed and epigrammatic. To Quintillian, Seneca offered the flashy appearance of brilliance, sure, but completely lacked the deep, moral substance required of a true ethical orator.
Section 5. Competing Tensions and Legacy.
So we've just met these 3 brilliant minds. But, as you might have guessed, they weren't in perfect agreement. They actually represented completely distinct and sometimes competing tendencies. Horace gives us the neoclassical impulse, obsessing over rules, decorum, and craft. Longinus brings the proto-romantic impulse, prioritizing raw emotion, genius, and transport. And Quintillian offers the civic humanist impulse, anchoring pure aesthetics in ethics and virtuous public speaking. It's like craft, emotion, and ethics are constantly competing for priority, and these 3 Romans perfectly map out that eternal struggle.
And their legacy? Oh, it's absolutely massive. Horace's rules directly inspired French neoclassicism through Boileau, and English formalists from Alexander Pope to T.S. Eliot and the New Critics. Longinus, his rediscovery sparked romantic aesthetics with thinkers like Burke and Kant. Quintillian literally shaped Renaissance humanist grammar schools, which means William Shakespeare's own education was substantially driven by Quintillian. And even today, Horace's dulce et utile debate perfectly frames modern arguments between post-colonial critics, who demand political utility, and those arguing for pure aesthetic autonomy. We're literally still just echoing the Romans.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. These Roman titans gave us the conceptual tools to evaluate basically everything we consume. So the next time you sit down to watch a film, read a book, or listen to a political speech, I really want you to ask yourself, are you being pleased like Horace wants? Are you being ethically instructed like Quintillian demands? Or are you being completely transported by the Longinian sublime? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking these questions, and I'll see you next time.